My son canceled my credit cards on a Tuesday morning. By Friday, he had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. My name is Robert Harmon. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that a good father protects his children from consequences. I was wrong. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step aside and let reality do the teaching. But let me start from the beginning. I built Harmon Construction from absolutely nothing. At 23, I had 1 truck, 2 employees, and a bank loan that kept me awake every single night. I worked 16-hour days in the heat, the rain, and the cold. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I poured every dollar back into the business because I believed I was building something worth passing down to the people I loved most. By 50, Harmon Construction was one of the most respected contracting companies in the state. Schools, hospitals, shopping centers, over 400 family homes, 300 employees who depended on us every single month. My name meant something in this city. I had earned that. 1 brick, 1 handshake, 1 honest day at a time. My wife Carol used to squeeze my hand and say, "Robert, you built all of this. Just make sure you don't forget to build your son too." I heard her every time. I just never listened carefully enough. Marcus was our only child. Smart, charming, and dangerously convinced from the age of 19 that success was something you inherited rather than something you earned. I paid for his college without hesitation, bought his first car, covered his apartment rent well into his mid-20s while he chased one business idea after another, ideas that always sounded brilliant at dinner and quietly disappeared within months. I told myself it was an investment. Looking back, it was avoidance. I was too busy building a company to notice I was simultaneously building something far more dangerous inside my son. Entitlement doesn't arrive loudly. It grows in the silence between too many yeses and not enough consequences. When Marcus turned 30, I made what I believed was a generous decision. I brought him into the company as Vice President of Operations, gave him a salary that most people spend a decade working toward, added him to my corporate accounts and business credit cards because I trusted him completely, because he was my son, because I genuinely believed that shared access would teach him shared responsibility. I was wrong about all 3. For the first year, things appeared fine. Marcus came to the office, attended meetings, wore the right suits, and said the right things to the right people. I thought I had finally reached him. I thought the years of patience had paid off. Then Carol got sick. Nothing in 41 years of marriage prepares you for watching your compass disappear. I stepped back from the business. Carol needed me more than any contract did. I handed Marcus more responsibility, more authority, and more trust than I had ever given anyone. That was the moment everything changed. My accountant Patricia, sharp, loyal, 18 years by my side, called me one afternoon while I sat beside Carol's hospital bed. "Robert," she said carefully, "I need you to look at something when you get a chance. Can it wait?" A pause that told me everything. I think it should. That evening I looked. 3 vendor contracts had been renegotiated without my knowledge, with companies I had never approved. Each one included a consulting fee paid to a shell company I had never seen before. The individual amounts weren't enormous, but the pattern was impossible to misread. I didn't confront Marcus. I'm a builder. I never tear down walls before I understand the structure behind them. Instead, I called Patricia and asked her to keep watching quietly. Then I called my attorney, George Ellison, who had protected my interests for over 20 years. "Say nothing," George told me. "Watch everything." So I did. Carol passed 4 months later. The grief hit me like nothing I had ever experienced. She had been my direction for my entire adult life. Without her, the world felt permanently tilted. Marcus came to the funeral. He cried. He held me. He promised he would take care of everything. I believed him. That was my final mistake. 6 weeks after Carol's funeral, I returned to the office. Grief without purpose becomes something that consumes you, and I refused to let it win. What I found stopped me completely. 3 senior project managers had quietly resigned. 2 major clients had received calls from Marcus suggesting the company was transitioning leadership, and that future contracts should go through a new entity, a different name, a different address. Marcus Harmon listed as sole owner. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was trying to erase me. I sat alone in my office for a long time, the same office where I signed my first contract, where Carol brought me lunch on our 20th anniversary, where I once looked at a young Marcus and told him this would all be his someday, when he was ready. I thought about what Carol would tell me right now. She wouldn't say destroy him. She would say, make sure he understands exactly what he is throwing away. I called George that evening. "It's time." "I've been ready," he said. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office at 9:15, 30 minutes late, as had apparently become his habit. He walked straight past my office without looking in. He had no idea I was there. At 9:30, he used the company credit card at a downtown restaurant, a client lunch, with clients from the new company he was quietly building using my contacts, my reputation, and my money. The card was declined. He tried a second card at 9:45. Declined. He called my cell phone at 10 o'clock. I let it ring. At 10:15, he walked into my office and froze the moment he saw me, completely calm, sitting behind my own desk, George Ellison beside me, Patricia across the table with 14 months of financial records stacked neatly in front of her. Dad. His face cycled through 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. I didn't know you were coming in today. I know, I said quietly. Sit down, Marcus. He sat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him dramatically. I nodded at Patricia, who walked him through everything. Every unauthorized transaction. Every renegotiated contract. Every consulting payment sent to a shell company registered 6 months after Carol's diagnosis. Every phone call made to my clients behind my back. Marcus tried 3 strategies in less than 10 minutes. First, he denied it. Then he minimized it. It was just exploring options, Dad. I wasn't actually going to go through with it. Then he cried, and that was the one that genuinely hurt. Not because it moved me, but because I could see exactly how many times those tears had worked before. How many times I had softened. How many times I had chosen comfort over truth because I couldn't bear to see my son in pain. Dad, I was going to tell you everything. I just needed to prove I could build something myself. You never believed I could do it without you. I looked at my son for a long, quiet moment. You're right, I said. I never believed you could do it alone. Relief crossed his face. The tears were already working. The old version of me was about to apologize, soften the room, and make everything comfortable again. But not for the reasons you think, I continued. The relief disappeared. I didn't believe you could do it alone, because you never once tried. Every opportunity you have ever had came from me. Every connection, every contract, every dollar, every open door. I leaned forward slowly. You didn't want to build something, Marcus. You wanted to take something, and you waited until your mother was gone to do it, because you knew she was the one person who could have talked me into forgiving you faster. The room went completely silent. George slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a formal legal notice removing Marcus as Vice President of Operations, revoking all account access, and documenting the full financial discrepancy. $231,000. 14 months. Every cent accounted for by Patricia's quiet, careful work. Marcus stared at the folder without touching it. You're firing your own son. I'm protecting 300 families who showed up to work every single day and never once betrayed my trust. I stood slowly. You should have thought about them before you started. I'm your son, he said again, quieter this time. Yes, and I love you. Which is exactly why I'm not letting you walk out of here believing that what you did was acceptable. I picked up my coffee cup calmly. You canceled my credit cards yesterday morning. Did you really think that would give you control? He said nothing. I built this company before you were born. I survived recessions, lawsuits, a market collapse, and the worst grief of my life. Did you genuinely believe canceling a credit card would stop me? Marcus stood slowly. He straightened his jacket. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face that wasn't anger or strategy or tears. It was shame. Real shame. The kind that doesn't perform for an audience. He walked out without another word. I stood at the window and watched his car leave the parking lot. I won't pretend it didn't hurt, because it did. Deeply. He was still my son. He was still the little boy who used to fall asleep in my truck on the way back from job sites, face pressed against the cold window, completely trusting the man driving him home. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. George handled everything with his usual quiet precision. Marcus repaid the full amount, not easily, and not quickly, but completely. There were no criminal charges filed. That was never the point. The point was simple and non-negotiable. Actions have consequences, even for people who share your last name. 6 months later, Marcus called me, not to argue, not to negotiate, not to ask for anything, just to talk. We met at a small diner 2 blocks from the first job site I ever worked as a young man. Marcus arrived before me, which had never happened in his life. He was sitting in a corner booth, both hands wrapped around a coffee cup, looking like someone who had spent 6 months learning things the hard way. He looked thinner, quieter, less polished in a way that actually suited him. I've been working for a mid-size contractor on the east side, he said. Entry-level project coordination. I organize supply deliveries and handle permit paperwork. I nodded slowly. It's harder than I ever imagined, he admitted. Yes, I said. It is. He turned his cup slowly. The project manager there, he's maybe 40 years old, started as a laborer at 22. Works harder than anyone on the site. He paused. Everyone respects him, not because of his title, because of what he actually does every single day. I said nothing. I let him talk. I used to think respect was something that transferred, like it was part of the inheritance. He shook his head quietly. I watched you my entire life and somehow missed the most obvious thing about you. What's that? He looked up. You never asked anyone to respect you. You just kept showing up, every single day, until the respect had no choice but to follow. I looked at my son across that small table. Really looked at him, past the expensive watch he was no longer wearing, past the rehearsed confidence that had always made me nervous because I knew what it was hiding. I looked at the man underneath all of it. He still had a long road ahead. Trust is not rebuilt in a single honest conversation over coffee. Some damage asks for years of quiet, consistent proof before it fully heals. I knew that. He was beginning to understand it. Your mother used to say, I told him slowly, that the most loving thing you can do for someone is tell them the truth before the world does. I wrapped both hands around my own cup. The world is not as patient as I am, and it is not as forgiving. He nodded. I know that now. We sat together for another hour. We talked about Carol. We talked about the early days of the company. I told him stories about jobs that nearly broke us, and the people who showed up anyway. He listened in a way he never had before, quietly, carefully, like every word actually mattered. When we finally stood to leave, he stopped at the door. Dad, he turned around. I'm sorry. Not because of the money. Not because I got caught. He held my eyes. I'm sorry, because you deserved better from me. And because Mom deserved to see me be better. Those two sentences cost him something real. I could see it. Then be better, I said simply. Starting tomorrow morning. He nodded once. Then he walked out into the cold morning air and didn't look back. I drove home slowly, past the children's hospital we built in 2009. Past the community center on Riverside that took 14 months and nearly broke our budget. Past the elementary school on 4th Street where Carol had once dragged me to see our name on a small bronze plaque by the entrance. None of those buildings made me rich. Every single one of them made me proud. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a moment. The same way I used to sit after long days when Marcus was small, gathering the last of my energy before walking through the front door. Some fathers leave their children money. Some leave property. Some leave names on buildings. I only ever wanted to leave my son one thing, the understanding that a man's real worth has nothing to do with what he takes, and everything to do with what he builds, protects, and is willing to walk away from when his integrity demands it. That lesson cost both of us more than we expected, but the most important lessons always do. And if Marcus one day passes that understanding to his own children, then everything I built, everything I sacrificed, and everything I refused to let go of will have meant exactly what I always hoped it would. That is not revenge. That is a legacy.